Shabbat shalom. A little bit better. There's a story, and forgive me for those of you who know it already, but I encourage you, even if you know the story, to follow along with me. There's an old Yiddish story about this man named Isaac ben Mendel of Prague. And Isaac ben Mendel of Prague is sitting at his home in Prague, and he keeps having the same dream every single night, over and over the same dream. And in this dream, he sees this bridge in Vienna. And in this bridge in Vienna, near the palace of the king, underneath the bridge, he sees a hole. And in this hole, he sees this great treasure. And over again, every single night, he has this dream of this treasure under this bridge in Vienna. And eventually, he can't take it anymore. So Isaac travels from Prague to Vienna, and he makes his way to this bridge near the king's castle. And underneath this bridge, he sees a way to get down. But on the bridge, every single day, the king's guards are walking back and forth. So Isaac continues to walk on the bridge. He paces nervously up and down. He knows that there is no way he can get down while the king's men are watching. So day after day, he paces and he's trying to find a route down until one day, one of the king's soldiers comes up to him and he says, "Listen, what are you up to? Every day I see you here pacing up and down. You're making us incredibly nervous. What are you up to?" And Isaac, having no other choice, decides to come clean. So he explains to this man, this soldier of the king, "Every night for 2 weeks I've been having the same dream that underneath this bridge, close to the king's castle, is this great treasure." And the man laughs at him. And he says, "You Jews with your crazy superstition and your crazy dreams, if we all did exactly what you think, we'd all be crazy. We'd all be running around the world on these weird treasure hunts. For just last night, for example, I had a dream that in the house of a Jew named Isaac in the city of Prague, there's a treasure in the stove. Now, can you imagine if I would just pack up and go to Prague to look for treasure?" And our friend Isaac hears this, and he immediately gets the first horse back to Prague, and he goes to his home, and he goes into his kitchen, and there he digs under the floorboards of his kitchen, and he finds an incredible treasure, and he becomes a very rich and successful man. This is the story. This is the old Yiddish story. Now, for those of you hearing it for the first time, or for those of you who have heard it a few times, my question to you is, what's the nafkamina? What's the takeaway? What is the message of this story? Anyone? You don't have to go too far to find the treasure in your life. Great. Anyone else? The real wealth in your life is what you have already. Right, is at home. So this has been the takeaway for hundreds of years to this story. This story is a famous story written by Rabbi Nachman of Bratslav. And the idea is a lot of people have interpreted it exactly this way. You don't have to go far, you don't have to leave your home, you don't have to go to the other ends of the earth to find your treasure, because your treasure is where you are. But in one of his great books, Rabbi Alan Lou Zikrono Livracha, who has these incredible books that get us ready for the high holy days, makes us re-examine the story a little bit. He says if we're paying attention to the story, there's actually a really interesting nugget that we have here. This man that our friend Isaac approaches on the bridge tells Isaac that he had a dream that the treasure is back at Isaac's house in his stove. And yet Isaac goes back, and we hear the end of the story is that he goes into his kitchen and he digs under his floorboards of his kitchen, and deep under the kitchen is where he finds the treasure. So Rabbi Lou says, what if he didn't find the treasure? What if he did find this stash of gold and rubies and jewels, but that's not the treasure that they were talking about at all? Because it's of note, it's something significant that this place where this man told Isaac the treasure would be is a place that he knows very well. He uses that stove every single day. According to this rendition of the story, the treasure is hiding in plain sight, and Isaac just doesn't see it. This is a message of staying and journeying, of being home and going away. Our parasha this week, one of my favorite parashas in all of the Torah, is a double parasha, a double portion, that talks about this very same theme, this very same idea, thousands of years before we had Rabbi Nachman of Bratslav, before we had Itzik of Prague. Our Torah portion this week is made up of two portions, one Nitzavim, the other Vayelech. Nitzavim means to stand, to be rooted, to be in place. Immediately following, Parashat Vayelech means to move, to go. In traditional, very appropriate Jewish context, this is a paradox. Welcome to Judaism. So many things that we have in our tradition are paradoxes. But this paradox is one that I find so incredibly moving, especially at this time of year. At this time of year, as we are approaching these days of repentance, these days of awe, these great moments of movement, we have this passage that says, Atem nitzavim hayom kulchem. All of you today are standing. It doesn't matter who you are. In this great moment of egalitarianism in the Torah, it says, man, woman, child, Jew by birth, Jew by choice, if you are a Kohen, or if you are a water drawer, or someone who splits wood for a living. All of you, equal in the eyes of God, stand here today. And here we have this great commandment, this great audacious moment in Jewish history where Moses stands in front of the Israelites and says, will you stand today? Will you root yourselves in the tradition of our people? And everyone agrees in unison that they will. Here we stand, here we plant our roots, and the very next commandment, Vayelech. Now that you're planted, now that you're rooted, it's time to go. If we think about this in the context of the parasha, there is one other small little phrase that becomes one of the most important foundations of who we are as Jewish people. In the same parasha of Nitzavim, in this egalitarian moment where everyone is standing before Moshe and standing before God and making this declaration of faith, God speaks through the mouth of Moses and says, it's time for you to find your Torah. And where does God say Torah can be found? Lo b'shamayim hi. Torah is not found in heaven. It's found within you. It's found within your heart. It's found wherever you may be. Now that you have made this pledge to stand firmly today, to root yourself with this people, it's time to go. And when you go, the treasure of Torah is hidden in plain sight. It is so difficult for us to understand as a religion so rooted in the routine, in the idea of doing things the same way every single day, with a few exceptions. 3 steps backwards, 3 steps forward, bow at your knees, say the same prayers over and over. We have this routine, and yet the exact opposite of routine is what the Torah tells us. We need to be uncomfortable. We have to break free from the ideas of the mundane, of the routine. And we have to find something new every single day in our life, because there it is, the treasure of Torah, hidden in plain sight. We don't have to dig under the floorboards of our house. We don't have to study for years and years and years in the yeshiva. We don't have to speak Hebrew. We don't have to read Hebrew. We don't have to know the prayers by heart. We didn't have to go to day school. We didn't have to go to Hebrew school. We didn't have to be born Jewish. The treasure is hidden in plain sight. As we approach these days of awe, these great moments of journeying together, it is my blessing for every single one of us that we make ourselves a little uncomfortable, that we break from the routine that we face every single day and every single year, that even though we are saying the same prayers, even though we are reading the same text, even though we are approaching these days in the same manner, in the same place, with the same people, many of us in the same seats, that we come to these days of awe with an understanding that who we are as individuals and who we are as a community is fundamentally different. That together we have decided to be Nitzavim. We have decided to stay rooted in who we are, and who we are as Jews, and who we are as a community, and who we are as a tradition. And because we have made that declaration, because we have made that decision, it's time to go. It's time to pick up everything that we find so comfortable and so routine and put ourselves in a position of vulnerability, put ourselves in a position of awe, and put ourselves in a position where that small stove that is in this communal house is where our treasure is hiding in plain sight. My friends, as we approach Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur this week, it is my blessing to every single one of us that we leave home so that we can come home, that we stay rooted so that we may journey out, and that our journeys will always bring us back to who we are, to the love we have for one another, to the love we have for this tradition, for the love that we have for this community, and for the constant reminder that the treasures of our Torah are hidden in plain sight. Shabbat Shalom.